was the last time you walked to Colorado to go on a ski trip or walked to Florida to go enjoy the beach? I'm guessing you've never done it. So every time you try to plan a vacation, you try to discern what's the best way to get there. This was something I came across a few weeks ago when I was trying to make some summer plans and figure out how am I going to get to Los Angeles this summer when I go for vacation? And what's the safest route for me to get there, the safest means of transportation? And as I looked into statistics and started kind of trying to discern the best mode of transportation, I realized that there's absolutely no other way or no safer mode of transportation than airplanes. So, as a little key, I am going to insist that on your next trip you fly through the air because it's the safest route you can go. So through the statistics and research that I did, I found that airplanes are by far the safest mode of transportation. That's because they're the most heavily regulated, whether that's the aircraft themselves or the pilots flying them. They are safer than cars, and they are most definitely safer than trains. So first I'd like to talk to you about how they are so heavily regulated. Airplanes are very strictly regulated because of the fact of the security measures that have to go into them taking off and being into the air and flying at hundreds of miles per hour across many, many miles over the ocean, over the land, over whatever it may be. And so according to European Aviation Safety Agent, a checklist of 54 inspection items is used during a safety assessment of foreign aircraft ramp checks. So what that's saying is every time a plane lands before it can take off again, there are 54 items that have to be checked off so that it can go back into the air again and be considered safe and mechanically sound. So this got me thinking, well, every year we have to have a car inspection, although it's not every time we get in the car. But I was curious, how many items do they check off when they do car state inspections, to compare and contrast what the regulations are. And so I looked at the Texas Department of Public Safety and found that under Code 5.01, it says that every passenger car has to be inspected yearly for 20 items, and then it listed what those items were. But as you can see, comparatively, a plane must go through nearly 3 times the regulation and the checklist that a car has to go through, and that's before every takeoff, much less every year. And so in addition to that, you also have to factor in, well, what are the pilots compared to drivers? Where's the safety error or the margin for error in user? And so as you start to look at that, you realize that all of us here have driver's license. They're very easy to achieve and to attain. You basically have to be 16, go through a course, and pass a test. It's not very hard. Well, I have a friend who just got his private pilot's license, or is taking the test on Sunday, and it's taken him nearly 3.5 months to achieve his dream of doing that, and going pretty much every other day to go through flights or checklists or learn about everything that encompasses. So that is a lot more stringent and strict of a path, making the actual flight something that they're a lot more prepared for comparatively to someone who's driving. And so to that end, aviationearth.com said more than half the car accidents occur due to negligence on the driver's part. According to research in the case of plane accidents that have all occurred around the world over the last 5 decades, 30% of accidents were caused wholly due to pilot error. So as you can see, that additional, more stringent training has led to a 20% decrease from the error in working an even more complex craft such as an airplane compared to a car. Next, I would like to compare airplane travel to car travel and kind of compare those statistically through fatality rates. Airplane travel is a lot safer from a fatality rate compared to cars. And part of that is because of an increase in technology that is very strictly regulated, as I've already said. So to that end, Softpedia.com had an article written by Tudor Vieru that said, since the early 1990s, a significant rise in safety trends has been recorded in the United States and around the world, and that trend apparently continues to progress to this day. And they add to this, they say in 1989, for every 1 million departures of aircraft, there was an average of 1.4 fatalities. Now I know 1.4 of a person can't die, but you can see from that statistic kind of how small of a number that is. And then you see the progress. That was in 1989. according to an article written by Dr. Arnold Barnett, who works for MIT, or who teaches at MIT, he says the death risk per flight in the United States today is 1 in 7 million. And so you can see that is such an astronomically small number. And he actually goes on to kind of paint a picture of what that number actually looks like in practicality. And he says, in fact, based on this incredible safety record, if you did fly every day of your life, probability indicates that it would take you 19,000 years before you would succumb to a fatal accident. So essentially, if you think about it, if the only way that you could die was through a plane crash, and you got on a plane every single day, you would live to be statistically 19,000 years old, which is pretty fascinating. And you say, well, that's pretty safe, but you haven't told me how safe a car is yet. Well, according to anxiety.com, 1 in 14,000 people are likely to suffer in a fatal car accident. So if you compare 1 in 7 million to 1 in 14,000, you can see that those numbers are not even close comparatively. To add to this fact, in 1990, 46,000 people died in auto accidents. They continued to kind of build what that would look like if that was deaths through plane crashes, and say that comparatively, a sold-out 727 jet would have to crash every day of the week with no survivors to equal the highway deaths per year in this country. So as you can see, I mean, on average, there was, I think, 3.5 plane crashes from commercial airline travel a year. So to have the same amount of fatal death crashes from planes as cars, they would have to have a 727 go down every day and no survivors. So you can see that those aren't even comparatively close. So now that we know that cars aren't anywhere near as safe as airplanes, you've got to be asking, well, surely trains are safe. Well, trains are still nowhere near as safe as airplanes. They're safer than cars, but still by no means anywhere near an airplane. The thing that's interesting about trains is finding travel statistics for trains. They only show passenger trains. They don't show deaths through freight trains and through people who work on freight trains, depending on the cargo that they contain. And also, trains have a very high number of people that pass away who are not technically passengers on the train from either pedestrians or crossways where train tracks are. And Brendan Corner from Slate.com states that trains are surprisingly lethal to pedestrians and drivers. Last year, trains, primarily of the freight variety, killed 357 people. So as you can see, it's not even passenger trains. If you include everyone, including freight trains and passenger trains, over 357 people died last year, which is still an astronomically larger number than people that died on planes. So as you can see, planes are significantly safer to travel through, whether it's, no matter where you're going, just because of a lower fatality rate, a higher regulation rate that makes them so much safer. So the next time you decide you're ready to go on a vacation, your question isn't to be how, but it's to be where, because it's always safer through the air.